Is it worth it to refinance your mortgage? That's a question we've been getting from a lot of clients now with rates at all-time lows. We're going to answer that question in today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning. I'm John Shear. I run a fee-only financial planning business in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel, and I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. We'll also have a special guest star today, which is Matthew Barnard, and he is also fee-only financial planner in my office in Chicago. So, John, a lot of times we've been getting questions about, is it worth it to refinance? And generally, I'm going to talk big picture first. So when we are financial planners and we go through our CFP or Certified Financial Planner training and take the test, we all get immerse ourselves in all the numbers, and we draw conclusions so that we can tell people the answers to the questions easily. And so when we're going through that, we realize, okay, it's almost always worth it to refinance, especially if you think you're going to be in your house for a while. You want to make sure you're paying off your closing costs, but it's almost always worth it to refinance. And so we spout that advice. However, and so for a lot of people, that's worth it. They just hear what we say and they go along with it. But a lot of people do not want to get more detailed. And so that's one of the reasons why we brought Matthew on today. And John, what do you have to say about it? Is this a question that you're getting a lot?
Yeah, it certainly is, especially with interest rates being where they are again, down low. But one of the questions, and you hit on it, Bridget, is, okay, refinance it makes sense. Listen, my mortgage is 3.75 and now I can refinance at 3. Like, well, of course I want to pay less, but then the question is, but I'm 10 years into my mortgage, right? And I've already paid all these things, and then rather than having it paid off in 20 years or 15 years, now I'm going to be out another 30 years. Like, how do you reconcile that math? And so, Matthew, thanks for joining us here today. I'm excited to hear, to see, I know you put together the numbers and like the data behind it. And as Bridget said, when we go through our CFP, we have to do all the numbers. I still like those, but I'm interested. I can't wait to see what you put together. So let's look at some of the numbers, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the non-numerical things, why I think it makes sense to refinance in general too. But Matt, can you share your screen? I know you've got some of the actual nitty-gritty here behind it for us.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, so and why don't I go ahead and just start with a clear screen here. So let's start off with that 30-year mortgage that we've been talking about, and have a round figure. We have a mortgage balance of $500,000. You buy a house, have a mortgage of $500,000. Let's say you bought it 10 years ago and you have an interest rate of 4%, which in the grand scheme isn't all that bad. So you have a monthly payment of around $2,400, 30 years to maturity. So with that loan, if you were to pay through the 30 years, you have total interest paid of right around $360,000. Now, one of the scenarios that we're just talking about is, okay, after 10 years, we get to this point and interest rates are incredibly low. What options do you have? So what if you are interested in really reducing your actual monthly payment? What you can do then is to refinance. You take a new 30-year mortgage. So now interest rates are right around 3 potentially, given different circumstances. So after 10 years with that original mortgage, you'd be right around $400,000 as far as the mortgage balance at that point in time. If you were to refinance with this new interest rate of 3%, your monthly payment for those next 30 years would drop down to right around $1,700 per month. Now, do keep in mind, you had a 30-year mortgage, paid for 10 years. Now you're opening a new 30-year mortgage. So overall payments are for 40 years. So including $3,000 refinance closing costs, and including the 10 years of interest you paid on the original loan, plus the interest you'd pay on the new refinance 30-year mortgage, we'd be looking at total interest paid of right around $385,000, which is just over $26,000 over the original amount, even though you're really reducing your monthly payment quite a lot, which is great.
Right, and it's over 10 years, so that's like $2,500 a year extra.
Yeah. And okay. So if your goal was to maintain your overall amount of time paying down your mortgage, so keeping with that 30 years, not increasing it to the 40, you'd be refinancing with a new mortgage of 20 years. So same scenario, same mortgage balance after the first 10 years, same interest rate of 3%. Your monthly payment would still drop. It wouldn't drop to that same level of 1,700 a month, but it still dropped from about 2,400 down to about 2,200. You'd have 20 years again to be paying the rest of this refinance mortgage down, but your overall total interest paid drops from that 360 originally down to $311,000, and again that includes all the interest you paid in that first 10 years of the original mortgage, and then includes all the interest you pay in the refinanced 20 years, and it drops about $50,000, which is great.
This is great, Matthew. I feel myself getting excited. Like, okay, I want to jump in and talk about a bunch of things here. But so, and thank you. I see you've got all the other tabs. Like, there's a lot of math that goes into this, right? This is the Reader's Digest version. I love the hey, tell us what time it is and not how the watch works sort of thing. But to make sure that I'm seeing that right, and that viewers see it. The original 30-year mortgage, you don't do anything great, you pay it off. The last scenario that you showed, number 3 over there, you're still paying it off in the same amount of time. But in the meantime, your monthly payments are a couple $100 less, and the total interest you pay is $40,000 or $50,000 less. So those are like exactly apples to apples. If I see that right, is that right?
Exactly. That's what I was shooting for.
So I look at, there's no reason why you wouldn't. And if a 30-year mortgage is at 3%, a 20 years probably slightly less than that, even, right? So the advantage is probably even more. And this really speaks to one of the things that I talk about with my clients when it comes to this is that, listen, refinance, we have people refinance to a 30-year mortgage, so your middle scenario. And then, hey, if you want to pay it off in 20 years, you can still make those extra payments. You can pay $2,200 a month. Now, because of the interest rate difference, you probably end up paying a little bit more in the way that I suggest folks do it. But then your minimum payment is only $1,600 or $1,700, right? So when things like, a worldwide pandemic come and maybe your job or you have a loss of income, that you're not locked into that higher payment, right? You've got flexibility should you choose to do that. And so one of the things I really believe in is having choices and flexibility. And so this is really interesting. I've done the math years ago, but this Matthew confirms that, you can make the same payments, you can do the similar things by, changing it, but by refinancing, you've got more control. And that's really critical for me. And so that's what I see as I look at these numbers on this stuff.
Yeah, and what I see is big opportunity. So if you're moving your monthly payment from roughly $2,400 a month to $1,700 a month, so if you do the 30-year refinance, then similar to what John says, you've got more flexibility, but you could also invest that money too, and you're going to get you're paying at 3% on it, and over the course of 30 years, you should be able to get a higher return than 3%. And historically, you would. So I like that opportunity too.
The one other thing, talking about that flex, that's great, that investment for a component, right? Like it's significant. And we have a number of folks that might be in this situation and aren't maxing out their 401k plans for both working spouses, or aren't maxing out their Roth, or some place where you can say, listen, I can take that $700 difference and I can put it into a tax advantaged vehicle or a tax deductible vehicle.
529 for that. 520.
I mean, those things.
So say for college.
The other thing that I look at, and I just recently did this myself, is, and I was 10 years in, it's now at 3%, you've got a one-way contract with the bank for the next 30 years that no matter what happens in the market, in the economy, in interest rates, they can never change their rate. They can never call the mortgage and make me pay it off. I can pay more, like in the 20-year scenario. I can pay it all off if I choose to. I can let it drag out. And at some point back when I first started doing this 25 years ago, CDs were paying 6% and 7%. If we
Right.
get back in 20 years, we get back to an environment where your checking account is paying 4% and my mortgage is at 3, I've got complete leverage over the bank. And there's some power in that side of it that I think is overlooked a lot. In addition to the just the raw numbers that you put together here, Matthew, is
Yeah.
that's powerful. Plus you get this leverage. Plus what Bridget said about you have the investing advantage, that's like I said, I look at this and go, yeah, this is why this makes sense economically, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
and so the only times that I would tell clients not to is if we see these $3,000 in closing costs, if they're not going to be able to overcome that. So it usually, the savings takes a few years often to pay for itself. So in a year or two. So if you think you're going to move in a year, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah,
That's when I would say it's not worth it. The other time is it does take some time. So I tell people it'll probably take 10 to 20 hours of your time, but as you can see, this is 10 to 20 hours that's well worth it.
Yep.
yeah,
You
yeah,
don't get that much of
significant.
a payoff normally on your 10 to 20 hours of time.
Yeah, that's right. This is $50,000 over time in these scenarios. I mean, that's really significant. Um, So is that, I mean, maybe this is a good place to wrap things up. I've got a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of other places that come in here, but we've really hit some of the big things here, I think. And as we try to wrap things up at every episode, like what are the big takeaways? I take that as, well, I mean, the bottom line is refinancing makes economic sense when you have some of the numbers. And as you said at the beginning, Bridget, we kind of look at like, hey, if it's at 0.5% or more, it's sort of a no-brainer. Yep. If you think you're going to stay in your house for a while, you can save 0.5%, go through the refinancing process. And then the other takeaway I get is it's not just about how much interest I pay, or it's not just about what my monthly mortgage payment is, that there are a lot of different factors that it gives you options, it gives you choices, it gives you leverage over the bank. Like those are sort of my takeaways as I have this conversation. Um, what
And
about you, Bridget?
and my other thing is that it's almost always worth it. Even if we put these numbers out to 20 years, they wouldn't be as dramatic. Like, so if you had only 10 years to go in your mortgage, the numbers would not be as dramatic, but they'd still be there if you're lowering your rate by 0.5%. So it's almost always worth it to do it.
Yeah, Matthew, you're the one that did all the math and did all the work in this. Do you have any other takeaways from these things that you wanted to share with folks?
I think in my view, the most important piece here is just that flexibility that you're talking about. Just being able to have so much flexibility. If you want to pay it down faster, you can. If you want to keep your payments lower and invest more money on the side through, a retirement account or otherwise, that's great too. It just affords you a ton of flexibility. It's incredibly helpful.
That's great. Well,
Well,
thanks so
great. So
much.
with
Yeah,
that, yeah,
yeah.
we'll wrap it up. And the other thing we like to do at the end of the episode is talk about ACP. You can, which is the Alliance of Comprehensive
Comprehensive
Planners.
planners.
Let
Yeah.
me remember that. This is a group that both John and I are members of. It's a non-for-profit group, and we all offer comprehensive financial planning. And so if you like the type of approach that we're taking, you can check out acpplanners.org and find out more information.
That's great. Thanks so much for joining us today, Matthew. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
of course.
And we'll talk to you next time, Bridget.